Good morning, Tallahassee. Time for Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, from Tallahassee to Thomasville and from coast to Atlantic coast, it's time to Wake Up War Chant here on 97.9 ESPN Radio, and a very happy Wednesday, July 12th to you and yours. Boy, you don't realize how much you miss having a theme song till you don't have it for a day, but it's certainly good to be back with you here on 97.9 ESPN Radio. Those of us who are podcast listeners, well, you got a chance to listen yesterday, but those of you who usually listen on the air, due to the power surge yesterday, you didn't quite get a chance to hear us over the airwaves on 97.9, but it's good to be back with you, of course, and it's good to be back having everything running smoothly. Yesterday was an interesting show, but it was a good show, so if you did miss it, go back and check that out. Of course, you're currently listening to the voice of Ryan Kelly. I'm the director of digital media at warchant.com. Drew Hickens on the other side of the glass, making things work. MVP of yesterday, guy who really made things work in a situation where they really shouldn't have. But, Drew, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fine. I am fine. I'm ready to go. Charlotte, North Carolina is in the very close proximity of the future. The ACC kickoff, of course, starting tomorrow. ACC Atlantic goes first. Florida State, Clemson, Louisville. I mean, the heavy hitters are out tomorrow, and we will be there on Radio Row getting you interviews, getting you up close and personal with some of the best that college football has to offer. So make sure to look out for that show on Friday. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing a road show. Looks like it's going to be myself, Ira Chaffel, maybe Ryan Clark. We're going to talk a little bit about what we're expecting out of ACC kickoff. We're going to do that for you tomorrow, so be sure to stick around for that. Of course, thanks for waking up with us here on 97.9 or your streaming devices. Tune in, the WTSM app. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Thanks for rating and subscribing us. If you do that, we really do appreciate it. And, of course, thanks for talking back to us at radio@warchant.com and, of course, at Wake Up War Chant. And as always, we're sponsored by our friends at For the Table. That's the group that brings you Madison Social. They bring you Central, and, of course, they bring you Township. So I think it is kind of funny that we spent yesterday's show talking about the idea of Florida State and Alabama and the idea that it's hard to pick against a program as dominant as Alabama, no matter how good you feel about the football team and no matter how good you feel about going in. And not but a couple hours later, the warchant.com writing team brought us a roundtable about the what ifs of the 2017 season, and their first question is, what if Florida State blows out Alabama? Well, what then? How do you process that then? So I thought it would be fun if we went through a couple of these questions and we had our own kind of War Chant audio roundtable, if you will. Just kind of a little lively discussion back and forth of the issues of Florida State sports. So that being said, let's dive right into this and let's start with that question. What happens if Florida State blows out Alabama? Well, I think it's a really simple question. People take notice very, very quickly. Alabama's been blown out before in the era of Nick Saban. That South Carolina game in 2010, that Ole Miss game just a couple years back. It's happened, but I don't think it's happened, first of all, by a Nick Saban disciple, because we brought that up yesterday. No Nick Saban disciple has ever beaten the Alabama Crimson Tide as long as Nick has been there. And, of course, Jimbo Fisher, a longtime assistant under Nick Saban. And it's never happened in that opening game. People have come close to beating Alabama. Virginia Tech came close to beating Alabama a couple times. West Virginia put up a good fight against Alabama in 2014, but no one's ever actually done it. No one's ever actually beaten them. And I think if Florida State became the first program to do that, and they did do it in a convincing fashion, especially after Clemson, who, you know, Florida State and Clemson have traded barbs and played some really close games over the last 3-4 years, people would take notice, and people would raise eyebrows, and they'd say to themselves, what is it about the ACC and their top programs right now that is just firing on all cylinders? And I think it would do that. And it also gives FSU a sort of get-out-of-jail-free card. As much as this game doesn't hurt you, in my mind, if you lose it and then you still go out and run the table. This game can help you tremendously if you win this game and stub your toe along the way. This is a earn a mulligan game. This is if you beat Alabama, we know how good you are. We'll forgive loss to X.
I think if we blew out Alabama, what would happen would be absolute mayhem. I mean, it would be insane. And I know this is kind of a weird thought. I'm not quite sure it would be the best thing for the team. You've seen kind of in years past the emotions of this team go up and down with wins and losses like that. I would worry about their head getting too big. I don't know. I got to say, as much as I enjoyed the season with last year, I'm pretty glad we're not doing it this year. When you tried to put a spin on it that we put on it last year, like, hey, the lights are always on, the cameras are always on, maybe they'll be grinding the whole time. I agreed with that, and I thought that made a lot of sense, but I really feel like, at least in the beginning of the year, it seemed like it was a little too much. It seemed like it kind of blew up some of the players' heads at times, and really maybe kind of made those peaks and valleys of the emotions be a little more than they should. If we blew out Alabama, you're right. I think here's the thing. I think it being so early in the season, obviously, if we blew out Alabama, no one's going to be upset. That would be awesome. But I don't know how much credit you're going to get for style points this early in the year, just given how much as a team everyone will change. Obviously, it would be a great win, a great resume booster, and you would get a get-out-of-jail-free card. But I feel like you would get that regardless of a blowout win. And I don't know. It's a weird place to be in, because you almost find yourself you don't want to lose the first game and have to run the table. That's not something you want. It's a very possible reality that we kind of have to maybe come to terms with a little bit. But at the same time, the game's huge for both teams, because if you go ahead and win it, then all of a sudden you look at your 11 games next, and it's like, you could trip up once and still be fine. And that would be huge for this team, I think.
Inverse question. What happens if Alabama blows out Florida State? You go ahead and take that one.
Oh, well, first things first, Florida State Twitter would melt down and blow up. Jimbo Fisher would be hypothetically fired by the next morning. Things of that nature would happen. I think more than anything, it's just a wake-up call. It's hey, you think you're national title ready every year. Let's not get back to the times of saying, hey, this year is our year, the next year is our year, next year's our year, like we used to always do kind of in the lost decade and leading up to 2013, where it really felt like we were just desperate for a good season again, and next year always felt like our year. You can't get back in that cycle again. I think if you got blown out by Alabama, like I said, more of a slap in the face to let you know, here's the level of play you need to be at if you want to be a national title contender. Here's what you need to do to reach that level by the end of the year. And plus, you now know there's no wiggle room. You can't go out and lose to Miami week 3 or lose to a Clemson or lose to a Louisville, because if you do, you're essentially out of the playoff race in all likelihood. Listen, I kind of feel like in week 1, this being a week 1 football game, a blowout versus a close game isn't going to make it a huge difference, because you even saw with the committee last year. USC started 1-3 and got blown out by Alabama in game 1. There was not a hotter college football team near the end of that season than USC, and they ended up in the Rose Bowl because of it. And so I really feel like if you do get blown out week 1, there's so much time to fix what's in the minds of the committee and college football. I just feel like a blowout versus a close, it's not, I don't think it's as big of a deal as it would be, say it was week 8 or 9.
I kind of disagree with you there on the USC analogy, only because of this. USC was putting in a new coaching staff a full-fledged new coaching staff to a certain extent for the first time in a long time, with Clay Helton taking over the reins as the head coach there. They were a new program, complete with a brand-new quarterback and a refreshed system, I guess you could say, something that was just a little different than what they were running. Florida State is going to have a second-year quarterback that's highly touted. Florida State has the same head coach, and they have a guy who's, one of the longer-tenured head coaches in the ACC and one of the longer-tenured he's longer-tenured than Urban Meyer at Ohio State. He's only, of the folks who are considered in that high group, he's only been at the same school a little less than Alabama's Nick Saban and Clemson's Dabo Swinney. This is a program that should be in good footing. It should know what its wits are about it. And if Alabama blows out Florida State, what scares me for Florida State is that means to me some of those questions that you have about this team going into the season, they got answered for you in the worst way. I think that says, well, the offensive line probably wasn't very good. I think that says to me, well, the defense came out lackluster to start the season the way they did last year. I think that says that you have a little bit more of the same. Some of the stuff that you didn't expect to happen to begin the 2016 season would have reared its ugly head to start the 2017 season. And then you have to start taking a look at your program. And you are right there. You have to start taking a look at what needs to change here, what coaches need to change, what players need to change, what folks need to not be in positions of power anymore, who doesn't need to be in positions of leadership, what are we doing wrong in practice, what are we doing wrong in our preparation, what are we doing wrong mentally. I think the problem is if you do that when you are either going to be the number one or the number two team in the country, you have a lot of stuff highly touted about you, and you go out and you just lay a gigantic egg against this team. I don't care how good Alabama is. You take a lot of pride in what you are as a program and what you do as Florida State. You end up having to take a long, hard look in the mirror about who you are, and where you stand in college football if you get blown out by Alabama.
And that's all good and fine, and I totally agree with that. But at the same point, all I'm saying is it doesn't matter if you get blown out week one or lose close week one. If you run the table, you're going to be in the playoff.
And that's true, too.
And that's what I mean in the sense of it's regardless, it's just not going to, in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to be that big of a deal. Granted, now if you go on to go 8-4 or 9-3, which to be honest, if you did go and get blown out to Alabama, would probably be a pretty good possibility, meaning that you're right, there's probably a lot of issues there with the team, and it was kind of just a lot of smoke around exactly how good this team was going to be. But I'm not the guy who's going to start saying what's wrong with the program and this and that after 1 week, especially if it's against Bama, because I think you've seen Bama make good programs look bad time and time again. And now if you go, like I said, you go with this team and you get blown out by Bama week one, and then say you lose to Miami week 3, next thing you know, you drop a late season game to Clemson. Then you're 9-3 again. Then we can start asking some questions. But I'm not by any means justifying a blowout loss to Bama week 1. That cannot happen. It should not happen. I'm just saying that it's not going to be Armageddon if it did happen. And I know the panic people would have, including myself. Listen, I would feel very bad. You'd feel very bad about this team if they went and got blown out week 1. There's no good way to feel about a blowout. I'm just saying that you've seen it before, and if you went and ran the table and you went 11-1, at the end of the day, the loss is the loss, the wins are the wins. You would still have enough to get into the playoff. A blowout loss to Bama isn't something that's going to keep you out of the playoff if you ran the table regardless, which you would have to do whether the loss was close or large.
Yeah, I'm with you there, but if you do get blown out, I mean, how great are you going to feel? How great is that team going to feel about a looming game with a decent Miami Hurricane squad in 2 weeks? Where is the confidence of that team? Where is the psyche of that team? Because it's going to have to dig real deep down and find something to avoid, I guess, kind of a North Carolina loss after the Louisville loss. It's going to have to really be a mentally tough squad if it wants to go out there and succeed after getting blown out. I don't care how good the opponent is. And, I mean, that's just kind of a rule of thumb in general.
No, yeah, you're right about that, and that's something they would have to. That's a call they would have to answer. It would all be a part of if that were to happen. That would be something that would, like I said, the biggest issue with getting blown out isn't getting blown out. It's why did you get blown out? It's are we as good as we thought we were? It would give you a lot of doubts, and I'm sure it would give the team a lot of doubts of how good you're exactly going to be this year. We talked about it the other day. The team bounced back rather well from tough losses last year, except for, they beat USF after the Louisville game and things. After the Louisville game or whatever. And listen, that was a historic tough loss and this and that. But then they went and lost to North Carolina, and that was no one's fault but our own. We talked about whether it was adversity or not, but there's no denial that we created that issue. You miss 3 field goals, you go down 21-0. That's tough to come back from. I don't care who you're playing. And so you're right. The psyche of the team would be in great question if you went against a team like Bama after gassing this matchup up. Because let's face it, the players have done a good amount of talking about how ready they are for Bama and this and that. And this is a matchup you've been looking for a long time, really, since the possible matchup of the 2013 national title. We've been talking about this. So if you went and did that and got blown out, I think more than anything, it's a reality check.
More questions on the War Chant Roundtable from our own Ira Schafel and Ryan Clark and our own Gene Williams up on warchant.com right now. It's a premium content item, so you have to be a premium member of warchant.com to get it all, but of course, that promo code, WarChant30, gets you a 30-day free trial. And, well, with the ACC kickoff coming up, now might not be the worst time to do that. But before we do that, let's get you all caught up, folks. This is why you were sleeping.
Hello. Good morning.
Wake up. Wake up. Wake me up. Good morning. Good morning.
What happened last night?
We start in Major League Baseball in the All-Star game last night where the American League victorious for what seems like about the 20th time in a row, 2-1 over the National League. It's Robinson Cano, the hero, with a solo shot in the top of the 10th at Marlins Park in Miami. The American now ties the all-time series against the National League. In the NBA, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, according to sources telling ESPN, has agreed to a one-year, $18 million deal with the Los Angeles Lakers. Los Angeles Lakers, of course, trying to replace a good couple bit of pieces on that young squad. Calvin Johnson is speaking out on why he retired from the NFL, and it's not nice to Detroit. Calvin Johnson says the reason that he left the Lions is because he knew that he had no chance at winning a Super Bowl in Detroit. Quote, "Of course I thought about it," he said. "Just like in basketball, guys, they create these super teams, but it's not quite like that in football where I had the freedom just to go. I was stuck in my contract with Detroit, and they told me they would not release my contract, so I would have come back to them. I didn't see the chance to win a Super Bowl at the time, and for the work I was putting in, it wasn't worth my time." Dang. Whew. That is... yeah, that'll hurt your feelings.
That is so soft. I had no idea that played into the reason why Calvin Johnson retired. That's insane to me. I thought it was more of a I'm worried about my head kind of thing, which you respect. If that's what you want to do, then I totally understand that. Football's a brutal game. No one's saying you got to play 15 years in the league. I thought it was more of a health thing, and I want to do other things in my life and this and that. But to say that it was literally because you wanted to get out of your contract with the Lions, especially if he goes and says that and ends up coming back and joining a Patriots team for lesser money to get himself a championship, that would be that would be a weak move, Calvin.
Yeah, not a good look. Dwayne Dedman, he goes on to agree to a 2-year, $14 million deal with the Atlanta Hawks. And finally, you can go ahead and score round 1 of Mayweather-McGregor for Conor McGregor. They had their first press conference yesterday. And, well, Conor was Conor. There's no certain way about it. Floyd was Floyd in that he was old, kind of did his thing again. McGregor made fun of how broke Floyd is. He said he's so broke he can't wear anything but a hoodie to a press conference. He said that he was going to knock him out inside of 4 rounds. And I don't know if you know this, but Conor McGregor wore a pinstripe suit, except they weren't pinstripes. It was a a expletive followed by the word Y-O-U, you. So you can imagine what the blank before you was. And that's very classic Conor McGregor. You can go ahead and score that one for him. You can say what you want about the fight. You can say it's going to be a dud. But boy, the lead up to it's going to be fun.
I'm just saying, if McGregor gets him somehow, some way, that's an all-time sports moment for me. I hate Floyd Mayweather. I would love to see McGregor somehow put him to sleep. I'm on the record by saying I don't think there's a chance that's going to happen. But I will say, I mean, he's got a fighter's chance, right? I mean, if he does touch Floyd, which I doubt he will, if he does touch Floyd, there's a chance he could go to sleep. You don't know. I mean, listen, I'll tell you this. I will be partaking in the pay-per-view event. McGregor is going to make it interesting leading up. That's what he does. And to be fair to him, his predictions normally aren't wrong. So I'm going to give my guy the benefit of the doubt because I love him. I'm a huge McGregor guy, but, I'll let him take this win in the press conference.
Absolutely. It's going to be a fun time. More when we come back. It's Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio is presented by TNT Golf Cart Supercenter, your one-stop shop for all your outdoor entertainment. Here's Ryan Kelly.
Shorty get down, good Lord. Baby got them open all over town.
It's Wednesday over at Township. Of course, our friends at For the Table sponsor Wake Up War Chant. You know the special. You can get yourself a whole liter. Yes, that's right, a liter full of beer there. Make sure you're over there. It's a new beer every week. Of course, last week they featured our friends from Proof 850, so I'm anxious to see what they do this week. So make sure you're over there with them, our friends for the Table. Like I said, it's a full stein. That's a liter. That's insane. That's 7 to 11 over there. And, of course, it's every single Wednesday starting at 7. All right, short segment here, so I did want to touch on, isn't it amazing, I had a conversation with a friend last night, and he said something very, very profound, that the All-Star game was a very good baseball game, but not a very good All-Star game. A pitcher's duel where the best plays of the night are a couple defensive plays and a couple solo shots make the difference. Yeah, that's not what you're going to All-Star games for. You're going there for a 8-7 close victory. But overall, I was entertained enough. It drug a little throughout the middle, but I was entertained enough to stay watching as a casual baseball fan. What about you?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point because, I mean, even think about the NBA. You don't go to the NBA All-Star game to see a 95-92 defensive battle. You know, that's not something that you go to see. It went into extras. I can't even remember the last time. Maybe I'm just blanking, but I can't really remember the last time there was a All-Star game in extras. I'm a Mets fan, and the Mets have no chance of making the playoffs this year, but I still always want the NL to win. It would be nice if they could have snagged one because, like you said, it's felt like it's been 20 years since they've won. I mean, it's just wild. But you knew when Robinson Cano hit that home run, that was probably...
Oh, yeah, that was all she wrote.
That was probably going to be it. But yeah, I mean, good baseball game. I think the bigger issue is that a lot of people tune into the All-Star game who aren't necessarily just going to sit down and watch a 10-inning solid baseball game. I think a lot
including the folks who went to the game.
Yeah, I think many people, they want to see fireworks. They want to see Judge hit a 500-foot home run. They want to see this. They want to see that. And you're just not going to get that. But at the end of the day, no big deal. Still a good game.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I said, we only got a short segment here, but I will say this. I've always kind of wondered, and I got thinking about it last night. I was thinking, we're very much in a college sports type of mood right now. How do you kind of take this one back? Do you ever think that how college football would react? I know it would never happen. I don't want it to ever happen. But how mad would people be if we ever got to the point where so many kids are sitting out of bowl games and so many folks are saying, these games don't matter, that we just decided, hey, we're going to have a college all-star game. We're going to have a college Pro Bowl. How mad would people be if that ever happened?
I think they'd be pretty miffed. Wouldn't surprise me. Speaking of that, by the way, I do believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty positive that I heard Chase Haney might have done something to his arm the other day. I think he needs Tommy John. Speaking of college sports, which is super unfortunate. He's a really good pitcher, but I think he's going to be out for the next year.
Well, if that is indeed the report, and if that is indeed true, well, that's a problem because you really could have used him in his bullpen. So we'll have more on that if we figure out more on that. But overall, when we come back, a little bit more Florida State-Alabama chatter. Looks like we're actually going to play this game where it's supposed to be played on Wake Up War Chant, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Yes, Florida State just landed a 5-star commitment.
I don't see that anywhere online. How did you get that news so fast?
I'm on the new warchant.com app. I get news updates and scores pushed to my phone instantly.
How much does it cost?
It's free. Just go to iTunes or the Google Play Store, type in Warchant, and install it on your phone. That's it.
A free app that keeps me constantly up to date on Florida State sports and recruiting? Wow, that makes it incredibly easy to follow my Seminoles and never miss out.
With the app, you'll also get quick access to all the stories and features on Warchant, including the ever-popular message boards that feature thousands of fans talking about the Noles.
Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole source.
Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio is presented by TNT Golf Cart Supercenter, your one-stop shop for all your outdoor entertainment. Here's Ryan Kelly.
Well, we found out some good news this week, and that's that Mercedes-Benz Stadium is all set to open. Going to be ready to roll 1 week prior to Florida State and Alabama. Brian Fisher of NBC Sports College Football Talk with the story. Quote, yes, we will be ready to open on August 26th, Atlanta Falcons CEO and President Rich McKay said at SEC Media Days on Tuesday. We truly tried to design it with the SEC in mind. Makes sense. It hosts the SEC championship game every year. We tried to design it with the college football championship in mind. We tried to design it with all those major events, which of course includes that Chick-fil-A kickoff in mind. $1.5 billion. We talked about it, and we talked about this earlier on in the season. There was a chance once upon a time that this was not going to be open on time, and it was part of the reason why the city of Atlanta decided we're going to keep this guy rolling, and we're going to keep this guy open for the time being. And I know here at Wake Up War Chant, brought to you by Fourth Table, that is certainly good news, and it's good to hear that when you walk into a stadium for Florida State, Alabama, that's nothing against the Georgia Dome, but you get to be the first major college football game played in what's now probably going to be the capital stadium of college football in the South.
You know what? Nothing against the Georgia Dome, but it's kind of against the Georgia Dome. I mean, I'm going to the game, and I didn't want that game played in the Georgia Dome. I don't think anybody did. It's part of the allure. It's part of the magic of what this opening game is going to be. Probably more than likely 1 versus 2, brand new stadium, and I'll tell you, I've seen pictures. The stadium looks like it's going to be absolutely beautiful. Talk about, designing it with the SEC and the college football playoff and the Chick-fil-A kickoff in mind. I can't see how this stadium's not going to have a huge kickoff game every year. It just looks like it's going to become really a staple of college football in my mind, just because of the magnitude of how awesome this stadium looks.
The Chick-fil-A Bowl kickoff games have been great over the years, and you're right. I think they only get better. Here's one thing that I think would be really cool. I think it would be really cool if, and I know they schedule these super far out in advance so teams can get an idea of their schedule, but I think it would be absolutely great if they could work out a way to where, kind of like the Super Bowl champion always hosts that first NFL game of the year on NFL on Thursday night, if the national champion always defended its title week 1 in Atlanta against a big-time opponent. If you could work that out, that'd be really cool. I don't know if it's possible, but it'd be really cool.
I would say probably not possible, but would be really cool. Would be definitely must-see TV. I mean, thing about college football, man. I mean, these big games, they're so awesome to watch, and there's so much hype and passion and tradition built up in these games and these matchups. It's just wild. I saw an argument the other day about all the big Power 5 non-conference teams that Florida State hasn't played. I think I saw. Is it true? You can correct me on this. I don't think Florida State has ever played Texas, which is wild.
I'm not sure if that's ever happened either. I can check Winsipedia for you really quick, but I don't think that's ever happened either. In the meantime, though, I did want to talk about part of what's going to make this game so cool at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, especially if you're a fan sitting in the stands, is they're getting it right over there. I tip my cap to the Falcons. They heard one of the things that people wanted with this new stadium. You know, the scoreboard's great and all that's great, but man, I can hardly afford tickets and parking and all that stuff as it is. Why do I have to pay so much money for a Coke or a hot dog or a beer or whatever? And they unveiled their menu pricing yesterday, their full menu for their arena concessions. Get this. It's $2 for a refillable soda, $2 for a bottle of water, $2 for a hot dog, $3 for fries, $5 for a burger, $6 for chicken tenders and fries, $5 for Bud Light draft beer.
That's what I was waiting for.
That could provide some trouble for some folks who may like to partake in the beverages during a football game.
I mean, because look at it like this. So I went to the Orange Bowl when we played Michigan this past year, and the beers were literally, I think, $10 or $11 a piece. So just your standard Bud Light bottle. And then when I went to the national title game, that was wild. Those beers were like, I want to say they were like $26 a piece. I mean, it was insane.
And we're not talking about some funky, interesting craft brew.
Just
we're talking
your
about
standard stuff, and it's because these stadiums. If there's ever more of a monopoly on anything, it's when people, especially think about all the drunk people who go into football games. Whether it's good or not, I'm not here to judge, but think about all the drunk people who go into football games.
Think about the impaired judgment that would actually agree to, 26 doesn't sound like a bad price.
Yeah.
That's kind of fair.
Next thing you know, you have 2 beers, you spent $50, and then you want to get a burger, it's $70. It's crazy. So good on them for stepping up and making some reasonable prices, especially because, let's be honest, the ticket prices to the game should overall cover what they're kind of knocking down in price and concessions, because the ticket prices are absurd.
Yeah. By the way, look that up for you. Texas and Florida State have never played. It's kind of hard to believe that those two programs have never gotten together. Whenever I always look at that, I always look for comparative teams in the region. Have they played them before? Have those two teams clashed? Oklahoma and Florida State, we know that they've played twice recently, but they've played 7 times all time. And, of course, many of those in bowl games, many of those good games, but also many of those ended in Florida State losses. Oklahoma leads that series 6-1 all time. I wonder, has Texas ever played Florida? That's another interesting one. Texas, Florida. This is so great radio for me trying to search. Yeah, they played 3 times. Texas won twice and they tied once. Last matchup, 1940.
Yeah, so let me go ahead and be the first to say that's a matchup that needs to happen. I cannot believe that Florida State and Texas have never played. I hope Texas gets back to its Texas-esque success here. I actually saw another funny thing the other day. I was watching a little clip of the 2009 national title game where Colt McCoy goes to do a little shovel pass, and a guy from Bama picks it off, and they end up. It was when Texas still had the lead in the game, and Bama started to kind of take over. And
then that wasn't Colt McCoy then.
I think
that would have been Garrett Gilbert.
Yeah, I think it was. I think Colt McCoy had just gotten hurt, maybe, or maybe it was right before. I'm not sure. But basically, it was this crazy statistic about how it was this program-changing play for them, because prior to it, they had a winning percentage. Prior to that play, they had a winning percentage of over 800, and then after that play, their win percentage has been like 4-something. And I was like, oh, that is just wild. That I don't know who comes up with these stats and finds them and throws them on Twitter or things of that nature, but I applaud you, because I love stuff like that. It's like, Holy smokes! I mean, who would have thought? But I mean, think about it. When has Texas really done anything since then? It's kind of crazy to think.
Well, they've been terrible since then.
Yeah, so I would love to see Herman turn them around. Maybe we can get a little opening matchup for Florida State in about 2020, 2021. I think, what do we open with Boise? We open with Boise, don't we? And I
want to say in 2019 in Jacksonville.
Yeah, 19 or 18, something like that. Yeah, so just a thought for anyone who's listening.
It's fascinating. I was talking about this last night with a friend during the All-Star game. We really have kind of been through a decade where a lot of quote-unquote dominant teams, and I'll use that as a shameless plug for decades of dominance. We're doing wide receivers today. So if you love Peter Warwick or Fred Biletnikoff or anybody, make sure that your voice is heard on Twitter. So I'll get that plug in there. But think about the teams that have been pretty much consistently bad throughout this decade. The Yankees started this decade with a World Series, and they've been pretty bad since. The Lakers have experienced arguably their longest bad drought in franchise history. USC has been since Pete Carroll bolted. Texas has been bad since that 2009 national title. It's worth noting they had a losing record the season after that. I think it's kind of amazing that we've entered a decade where a lot of the quote-unquote storied franchises of their respective sports have not been good. And, of course, there are exceptions. The Alabama Crimson Tide has been great. Notre Dame, they've had their ups and downs. Florida State, probably one of the better teams throughout that decade, but, of course, we know the decade before, not the greatest for FSU. Miami, Florida, not the greatest decade. Michigan, until Harbaugh gets there, was lost for pretty much a decade. I just think it's weird that we've entered a time and space where a lot of the blue bloods of sport are kind of down at the same time.
It just goes to show you, though, how fragile the overall makeup of college football is. You make one wrong hire. This could be true with anything.
Oh, yeah.
But you make one wrong hire, and it sets your program back all of a sudden 5-6 years because you ride with that guy for 3 years, and then the next guy comes in, and even if he's the right hire, it's going to take him a year or two to get his guys in there, get things. Next thing you know, it's been 5 years, and you've been terrible. So I just want... That's another thing when people say, oh, maybe it wouldn't be so bad if Jimbo bolted, or maybe if we lost Jimbo, wouldn't. Listen, if you got a good coach in this day and age in college football, you got to hold on to him because, it's huge. Look at Florida. Florida was on top of the world there for the longest time. Urban Meyer leaves for whatever. He's health concerns, whatever you want to, however you feel about that, he's gone. They make one wrong hire, and many people will tell you that Muschamp set that program back a long time. Just the things that he did and how long Florida rode with him and kind of the overall detriment he did to the program. And that's scary. That's a scary thought to think that you get one wrong guy in there. All of a sudden, you got 5 to 7 years of bad college football for your team to look ahead to. It's wild.
Think about when Michigan fired Lloyd Carr. And it was going to be the best thing ever for them. And Rich Rodriguez was going to continue the Michigan man tradition. And then they wandered through the wilderness for 5, 6, 7 years. They blew their long-standing bowl streak, their long-standing winning season streak, all of that just because the grass was a little bit greener. Look at Pete Carroll. We talked about SC this decade. Pete Carroll leaves, kind of avoids the hammer, and I know probation had a little bit to do with SC struggles at the beginning of the decade. But remember, Lane Kiffin was going to make it all better. And then, of course, it was going to be all better after that. It was going to be all better after that. And it was going to be all better after that. And it never, ever came to be. It's amazing to me how that just kind of seems to be the thing. And here's the thing. The biggest stake in that in college football right now is the Big 12. We already mentioned Tom Herman. Your two marquee programs right now are both going to have first-year head coaches next season. Tom Herman, Lincoln Riley.
Not to mention Lincoln Riley is, I think, the youngest coach in
yeah.
Let's talk about a gamble by Oklahoma. I get what they were trying to do, but that was another. We've talked about it on here before too. It makes you wonder what was really going on behind the scenes at Oklahoma, to where Stoops decided that it was a good time to leave and give the reins over to Lincoln Riley. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It could pay off, but it seems like a huge gamble.
And at a point where the Big 12 is still the most vulnerable of the Power 5 conferences, it's still the one whose future and its stability is up in the air, they need one of those two schools to be good. Because as much as I like Mike Gundy and as much as you like Oklahoma State and as rootable of a program as they are, the brand of Oklahoma State football cannot consistently carry a conference. Bill Snyder, he's a great coach. K-State's not carrying the flag for the Big 12. Texas Tech, sure, they're fun to watch every now and then. That team, the way they play football, and to a certain extent the way they have to play football to be successful at Texas Tech, isn't going to get the Big 12 in the playoff. Baylor, new coach, new question marks. You can't guarantee anything there. I'm fascinated by that, and I think that's going to be a really fun Red River rivalry.
Speaking of Baylor, I can't believe that program's still afloat, man. I mean, there was a string there for a little bit where something terrible came out every day. I do not understand why a coach would take that opportunity on. It just seems like they're one more fatal blow away from just not even having a football program.
Well, man, I mean, it's rather obvious and it's sad, and I know we got to go to break, but it's become pretty obvious. If you've got money and you're good at football, or at least you're trying your darndest to be consistently good at football, you can make anything go away. Say what you want about it, but it just kind of seems to be the world we live in. We're putting a bow on it after this. It's Wake Up War Chant, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio is presented by TNT Golf Cart Super Center, your one-stop shop for all your outdoor entertainment. Here's Ryan Kelly.
Little Kaiser Chiefs to send you home today. I like it. Good stuff as we put a bow on it here. Wake Up War Chant, 97.9 ESPN Radio, brought to you by our friends at For the Table. If you're on a diet, you might want to change the radio or shut the podcast off. Go do something else right now, because I'm about to do a public service. According to WJLA of ABC 7 out of Washington, D.C., Krispy Kreme will be celebrating its 80th birthday on Friday, and in doing so, they will give you 1 dozen glazed donuts on Friday for 80 cents.
Yup, thanks. Appreciate it, Krispy Kreme. I'll be swinging on by Friday. 80 cents. Goodness gracious. What a deal.
That's a problem for a lot of people.
It's no problem for me.
And one would imagine there's enough folks going out that door that the hot light's always going to be on Friday.
Yeah, well, like I said, no problem for me. Appreciate the hospitality, Crispy.
And the thing is, I can't imagine they're going to lose a ton of money on this, because I've always thought that what a huge racket donuts are, and that they're basically just kind of sweet bread with a little glaze on top of them.
Yeah,
they can't cost a ton to make.
I wouldn't think so.
And you're still charging like $1.50 a pop for them. I mean, you're making a ton of money if you're making donuts. That's basically the way about this. Drew, thanks so much for your work this week, buddy.
Thank you.
Thanks to you guys for listening. We're back tomorrow with a road show on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
WarChant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. WarChant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WarChant30. That's WarChant30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WarChant30. WarChant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.
Hey, thanks for downloading today's show. If you haven't already, why don't you rate and subscribe us? We certainly do appreciate it, and of course, we appreciate you listening anyway, so just go ahead and click that right there. You know you want to. Come on. Thanks again for letting us do the show. We love giving you all the football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, all year round. Not just football season, not just spring practice, but hopefully giving you the freshest and newest FSU content every day. Thanks, guys.